Hey, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Honest Conversations with Mo, the Mo Love podcast. Been a while since the last episode. Been very, informative as far as kind of learning about myself and kind of things. Had uh a work trip in Chicago that had its ups and downs, but we survived and we went through it. But hope everybody's out there that's doing well. And yeah, just hope everybody's having a great Halloween week. I know some are celebrating early, some later on in the week, later this week. Hope you got your costumes ready and are of course excited. But want to go ahead and get right into this today's episode, and want to start off with this kind of statement slash quote I kind of saw recently, and how the price of greatness is responsibility. And when I saw that statement and kind of read it, I initially was hesitant in understanding, its meaning. But when really sitting down and pondering on it, realizing that to achieve greatness, it requires a level of responsibility on one's own part to not only do the work, but be willing to set yourself apart to stand out to achieve that goal. Whatever it is, if you have that discipline, that dedication to focus on whatever the goal is, or whatever it may be, that it requires your responsibility to take care of it, and for you to take ownership in that. Because I think we hear the word greatness, a lot, and gets thrown around often. And the thing about wanting to be great, or to be great, requires a sense of giving up parts of yourself that you may not be aware of, that it requires for you to give up. And I think that's the thing about greatness, is that sometimes we're often chasing it, but we're often not realizing what it really truly requires. And whether that's, for example, for myself, like, trying to be, the best version of myself in the gym, that requires, you know, taking responsibility, and not only being active and consistently, going to the gym, but also in kind of putting in the work and, listening to my body, and, you know, taking in the right meals, and just really what it entails to be great in the gym, because it's not just the workouts that you're doing, but it's also the work that you're doing outside of the gym as well. And I think that's just like a small tidbit of like peering into greatness that we're all kind of seeking, whether it's, career, whether it's, work, whether say career, whether it's, personal, or anything that we're truly seeking out to be the best version of ourselves, or to be the greatest version of ourselves, requires a sense of responsibility and a sense of ownership in that responsibility. And I think when you're not willing to pay that price, then you're not really setting out for greatness. You're setting out for mediocrity, and setting out for complacency, or content with what is, the status quo in that sense. And then from there, I kind of want to shift into this idea of growth versus growing, where growth is doing, or is the awareness of knowing what it is that you need to work on and improve upon as an individual. And growing is taking those necessary steps and doing the due diligence of actively, changing yourself to grow, to really actually, to be growing. It's, like a plant, when you plant a seed, that initial growth, yes, it occurs, but it requires that constant watering to really grow and growing into, what the plant is supposed to ultimately be. And I think we have to remind ourselves as individuals that we have to, constantly water ourselves in the areas that we want to see ourselves grow in and want to see ourselves become better in. And then it also just requires that understanding of what it is that you need to grow in, where is the growth, where's the growth required? And is, having those hard conversations with yourself to be aware of, hey, this is an area for growth. This is what I'm going to do to grow and kind of water those seeds and grow into it to where that end result is that growth. And I think that's how we kind of conflate the thing about growth is when we're seeing, when you're seeing progress and content with minimal progress. And, it kind of goes back to, that price of greatness is responsibility. And I think when you're really trying to go, when you're really trying to change, it requires change. And I think, I spoke on this, very first episode way back when is, that concept of change and how we're constantly evolving, and it requires evolution for us to really, grow and have that true growth. So I think it's just that awareness to really know, hey, this is where I need growth in, and this is how I'm going to go about growing in those areas. And then I want to also then delve into for myself is those areas of growth. A couple areas I've been thinking about of late, of areas of growth that I'm working on. And I think I spoke on this on the last episode as far as like tone, and I spoke on like my love for 3 different artists, Cole, Drake, and Kendrick, and I spoke on how Drake is that womanizer side of me, and I guess I want to delve into kind of those romantic woes I have with women, um, in how I'm looking to kind of grow in that area where eventually I want to be in unhealthy healthy relationship, healthy partnership. I think it's just understanding where those areas of growth in myself that is required to eventually get to that point. And I think for me, starting off with kind of the area of growth when it comes to my romantic woes is sometimes I the understanding of foundation. I think I go back to this was back in the good old cab days, and my boy Darius, shout out to him, doing his thing. But he spoke on the importance of having a solid friendship first, with a woman, or just in a relationship in general, just having that solid relationship, and that's being the foundation of that relationship. I think for myself, I wasn't really aware of or mindful of what that really meant at the time. And now through what I go through as far as relationships these days is how essential it is to have that solid foundation, because I think that's where I'm struggling, and I kind of struggling in that sense of those woes, where it's not I'm incapable of building a solid foundation. I think it's just not having the consistency with someone to be able to develop that solid foundation. And I think this also goes back to, I think I was speaking to someone earlier, as far as like my pickiness, at times, where, and then I think also just where it goes back to something my therapist told me a while ago, as far as, as far as he told me that I don't pick women that are good for me. And I had to sit on that and think about that. And it was interesting in that, why am I not choosing things, that are good for me? Um, and I had to sit there and ponder on that, and constantly, in thinking about that, that same statement. But yeah, I'm just looking for something that's good for me and looking for something that's built off of a solid foundation when it comes to relationships. And I think that's an area of growth that I'm working on within myself, is to not necessarily, you know, force that issue, but just allowing it to kind of happen naturally. And it'll kind of parlay into the other two areas, but just in terms of where, requiring myself to be, to not necessarily, just not only to, be, but like be in the moment when it comes to uh those romantic engagements, but I think also not thinking too far ahead. And I think that sometimes is a thing I tend to do, is, getting too ahead, and, that overthinking kind of comes into play. And then next area of growth I want to focus on is this to be or to do. And for this is, it made me think, is do I want to be this person that others, expect me to be, or do I want to do the things that I've set out for myself, and understanding that it requires, and me giving more than maybe I'm even thinking I'm capable of. And I think to be or to do is kind of in that sense of when it comes to, our professional goals or just personal goals, just in general, where do we want to be, what, or do the things that kind of make us content or allow us to be, or are we really out here, trying to, you know, stand out and, separate ourselves and do the things that, truly, shine a light in our life, or truly bring us joy, and really, really create that spark within us. And when it comes to that to be or to do, it's, a constant struggle, especially when sometimes the being seems like the easiest way to go, because let's say, constantly chasing, promotions or things like that, and being, content with that area of growth, or do, as far as doing and knowing what I'm ultimately looking to achieve, like when it comes to my career aspirations, um, that it'll require, more of myself than I can, only imagine. Obviously not in this moment, but eventually, later on down the line. So I think having that constant battle of to be or to do is, something I'm working on. And I'm a to do person. Uh, and it's easy to fall into being a to be person. Um, when you want to do, versus, I want to be, and I think it's those, those two statements, those two completely different statements, when you want to do, you completely set yourself out to accomplish these things, no matter, what the obstacle that's in the way, versus I want to be, and that's, you're content with, titles, or, a sense of reputation, or, material things. And I think it's understanding that difference in the two. And I think working on, you know, how it is I go about, I, I do, or I want to do, or so I think I'm constantly in that phase of figuring that out, not only for myself, of being an I do person, but those constant, battles with I want to be, because we eventually, see ourselves in some way, but if that doesn't align with what we want to do, then it never makes sense. And then the last area of growth I want to touch on is wrestling with the void. Man, wrestling with the void is this idea of just being able to sit in silence, in that sense of having, not only patience, but just really sitting in silence. I think for me, myself, I've never been a person that can just sit in silence. I feel like when it's too quiet, it's almost frightening in a sense for me internally because it seems like, something's going on. And I think wrestling with just being still and doing, I think I spoke on it in an episode before of doing nothing in a sense, but just that silence where we feel like sometimes we have to, constantly talk, have to constantly do that. It's not always, it's very counterproductive. It's never really fulfilling. It's just kind of for that moment. And I think when we are able to just sit in that silence, we kind of unlock a part of ourselves that um, we didn't even know. So I'm constantly. I mean, even obviously, you guys know rambling now in the sense of having this podcast where I just talk, but not necessarily that, but just in the sense of just sitting in silence, not always having to react, not always having you know to provide a remark or something like that, but being able to just to sit in that void. And when we're tussling with ourselves, that wrestling and fighting against it, it's almost, trading ourselves. So I think when for myself, as far as figuring out how to, kind of wrestle with the void, is just that awareness of, hey, I suck at sitting in silence, but how can I accept silence? And just going about, hey, having that sense of awareness, and now just being able to be in those moments where not everything is needed to be said, and being able to just sit in that void and sit in whatever it is, because as much as talking can be beneficial, it can just be just as detrimental. And I think when we're able to be silent and not say things, it speaks volumes more than we even know of or even aware of. So that is another area in which I'm working on within myself, in terms of wrestling with the void and being able to be content in not only the unknown, but being content in no noise. You know those really just that silence. And I mean, it's tough, and constantly working on that and trying to improve on that. And we'll see from there. But those are the areas of growth for myself, that I'm working on. And then next, I want to, of course, pivot to the WNBA finals. We had an incredible series between the New York Liberty and Minnesota Lynx that went to 5. I was wrong once again with my pick. I was hoping the Lynx pulled it out, although they did get cheated. Coach Reeves was right in that sense, where I do think there was a lot of egregious foul calls not called in favor of the Lynx. Meanwhile, the Liberty were getting plenty of calls and questionable calls, and even that Breanna Stewart, where she ended up getting to the line, was that in OT or before OT? I can't remember, but in that moment where she traveled on that play, and it was incidental contact at most, in my opinion. I know, was it Smith? I can't remember, that might have hit her on the hand. But yeah, that was an incredible series. And Nafisa Collier played her ass off. But the league wanted the Lynx. I mean, not the Lynx, the Liberty to get their first championship in 28 years, and they got it despite a rough game from Sabrina Nescu. Breanna Stewart had an up and down game. Jonquel Jones was solid, but it was the others that helped the Liberty get that championship. Shout out to Nayara Sabali, as well as Fibat, the rookie. So shout out to the Liberty, shout out to them, getting their first championship. And it's gonna be interesting next season. We're gonna have more games. The WNBA PA opted out of the collective bargaining agreement, although that won't go into play till the 2025 season, but they did opt out this off season in hopes for more revenue when it comes to basketball related income and just getting a bigger share of the pie after the incredible viewership, incredible attendance numbers, jersey sales, merchandise, etc. Record numbers throughout the W this past season. And they're very much deserving of that. So it's going to be interesting as we see not only how that story is going to affect this upcoming WNBA season, but moving forward, if we do get those how those labor negotiations go, how the new CBA is constructed, what do they agree upon, what do they lose out on. So that's going to be interesting, and hopefully rightfully they deserve and get the salaries that they deserve, but as well as just the league understanding the true value of the players. And then we also got the Valkyries. What is it? Wow, I can't think of the term, but the draft for wow, I said it a while ago, but now my mind just drew a blank. But we're gonna have the Valkyries draft where they'll be able to pick apart, across the rest of the league. That's gonna be interesting. What the teams, the 6 players, the teams decide. Expansion draft. Why could I not think of that word at the time? But the expansion draft for the Valkyries. It's gonna be interesting. That's gonna be a fun one to watch come December. And yeah, WNBA, season's over with, but you got Athletes Unlimited around the corner. You got the 2 owners with Unrivaled. One having won the championship in Breonna Stewart, the other who lost, felt cheated, and Nafisa Collier being, co-founders of this league or co-owners of this league, and how that's going to go, but Unrivaled this upcoming winter. So we still have, incredible opportunities for the game of women's basketball to continue to grow, not only this year. Shout out to women's college basketball around the corner. Paige, Juju, Kiki, Raven, KK Arnold, and plenty of other names I'm missing. But shout out to women's college basketball coming back. Yeah, it's about to be a fun year for women's sports as it continues to grow and continues to evolve. So excited to see, the next steps. And then next, I want to get into NBA opening week. Wow, am I shocked to say the least? Indeed, I am. But the Lakers are off to a 3-0 start after this opening week, getting a great win against the Timberwolves opening night, then coming back down 22 against the Suns, and then despite blowing 2 15-point leads against the Kings last night, an incredible fourth quarter performance by LeBron James, in which he led the Lakers on a 21-0 run in the first 3 minutes of the fourth quarter, where he pretty much had 16 points in the first 2 minutes of that quarter. Led the Lakers to pull it out against the Kings last night. And AD's had 3 straight 30-point games. Braun had a triple-double last night. AR's looking good. Don Connect had his first double-figure game, which I'm expecting to see more of from the rookie, because he can shoot that thing. AR's hooping. Rui's aggressive, not only attacking the basket and attacking the rim, but on the glass. Loving to see that from him. And overall effort from the team, loving it. And I think the culture and mindset JJ's looking to instill in this team is very evident. And it's exciting and it's refreshing. And obviously we have the concerns on the overall, roster construction of this team, as it'll eventually come down later in the season. I still think we do need another third true scorer for AD and LeBron, as well as a backup center. to have next to, or center to have next to AD. Um, but despite all that, and eventually we'll get to one of those uh, that arises. But because I'm concerned about our bench scoring, really, that's my main concern as of right now. But outside of that, the Lakers are looking good, playing with effort, playing with intensity. There's constant ball movement, constant actions, cutting. Nobody's just standing in the corner, no five out, ISO. Um, yeah, it's beautiful basketball to watch. I'm loving the Lakers. It's exciting. This era of JJ, it's fun, man. I love it. I love it. And hopefully, it continues, throughout the season, um, as well as, I mean, it's been exciting start to the season so far across the league. Ja's back, Ja hooping, the Grizzlies looking good. Denver, Denver's not shooting that well without, they're saying it's because of KCP gone he went to Detroit or Orlando? I forgot where KCP went in the off season. I think it was Orlando, but yeah, KCP not being there, that 3-point shooting is not as consistent out there in Denver. Minnesota still kind of figuring things out with the Julius Randle trade. Uh, Boston, I hate to say it, Boston looking like they're looking to repeat as champions, but I don't know if that's happening. And then who else across the league is Wemby's hooping, which I'm not surprised by. But he's got Chris Paul to feed him the ball, but Wemby's hooping. Uh, yeah, the Grizzlies have really kind of been the shocker for me thus far, in the sense of like all their other guys are kind of stepping up, along with Ja and Bane. They hooping, but with Santi Aldama, I think Jay Huff just had a big game the other day. When you got Gigi Jackson, Scottie Pippen Jr., so they got a nice little young squad. OKC doing their thing, and I think they showed that it wasn't a fluke. They're the real deal. They're gonna be tough in the West. And Philly, Embiid's out for the week. Paul George is been out for the week. I think they're both set to come back this upcoming week. Milwaukee looking shaky out there. Milwaukee. But yeah, across the league, it's obviously early in the season. So it's gonna be fun. AD's being the leading scorer. Shocking. 3 straight 30-point games. I'm loving it, AD. Keep hooping, man. Keep hooping. And then we had obviously the Bron and Bronny moment in the first game against the Timberwolves, first father-son duo. I wish Bronny would have hit that three from that pass from LeBron. And that I think it was the right wing. Yeah, if he would have hit that, would have went crazy. And even just to note on JJ's coaching, to have the awareness of where I think the Lakers were up 19 at that point with like 4 minutes to go in that second quarter. You do the Bron and Bronny, moment. But as the lead dwindled down, because I think the Timberwolves went on a 7-0 run, and the lead was eventually cut to like 13, and he was smart to pull Bronny. And it's like, all right, that's the moment. Now let's go win this game. And that's what we set out to do. We won that game. So I think just knowing those key adjustments, those coaching adjustments, knowing when to call a timeout when the opposing team's on a run, has been a sight for sore eyes. And just having a coach that makes adjustments has been fun to watch. It's been fun basketball, like I said. So gonna continue, watching my Lakers. And then next I want to get into NFL, week 6 through 8. My Falcons are now 5-3 after winning against Tampa Bay earlier today. I think obviously we lost to Seattle the week before. I think we beat New Orleans that week previously. I think it was the New Orleans game. But just looking good. Kirko looked good today. Got 4 touchdowns, 2 to Kyle Pitts, 1 to Darnell Mooney, and 1 to Bijan Robinson. But yeah, Falcons looking good. Rough game against the Seahawks last week. But sometimes you need those, tough losses, especially after all the close ones we kind of had. Oh no, it was the Panthers game that we had that win. Um, it was the it was Bucks, Saints, Panthers 3 straight weeks. Then we lost to the Seahawks. Then we beat Tampa Bay again today. So we know we're looking good. Concerned about that pass rush. Then across the rest of the league, that duo of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry's been unstoppable. Been tough to. I don't know. It's just gonna be interesting. The Chiefs are still hot though, despite not having any weapons. Even though they now just picked up D Hop from Tennessee. The Jets got Devontae Adams, even though that really hasn't made a difference for them. Russell Wilson is back at starting quarterback for the Steelers. And then Amari Cooper is a Buffalo Bill, and he's out there doing solid for the Bills. But I think the 49ers have been depleted with injuries across the entire season, as well as just the Cowboys have been looking rough. This Cardinals have been looking surprisingly well. Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. And then just that entire defense of the Cardinals, they've been looking good. And then who else across the league? I'm trying to think that's coming up. No, the Lions. Detroit versus everybody. That is one tough team right there. They're looking good. Gave the Vikings their first loss. The Vikings are, despite their great start, are having internal issues with Jordan Addison, and the Raiders. I think are eventually going to have a fire sale. Cleveland losing Deshaun Watson for the season to I think it was a torn Achilles, but it's been an interesting week 6 through 8 so far in the league. We're about to near the trade deadline this upcoming week. I think it's on Wednesday, the trade deadline, Wednesday, Thursday, I can't remember. But yeah, trade deadline. Hopefully my Falcons go get a pass rusher. I'm hoping. Actually, who's the better contract wise? If I look back, I think Miles is the better as far as contract number wise. But if we go get Myles Garrett, if we go get Max Crosby, we just need a pass rusher. Our pass rush has been trash, booty cheeks all season. Last in the league in generating or having overall total sacks, and I think just even generating pressure on the quarterback. But yeah, so we got to go fix that. That is an area of concern, especially if we're looking, to contend this season and moving forward. But yeah, it's been a fun couple, NFL, couple weeks across the league in the NFL. And it's gonna be interesting as that playoff picture, kind of gets narrower and narrower. Who comes out on top. In the NFC, it's a tight race. You still got even though Jaden has been hurt of late, I think he came back today. Or I don't know if he's still out or not. But with Washington looking well, Philly with Saquon, Minnesota being a shocker, Seattle being solid, very very even kill in the NFC versus the AFC is the heavy hitters as always. You got your Bills, you got your Chiefs, you got your Ravens. It's gonna be interesting with Tua now back. Hopefully, he stays healthy. The Jets, I think, might pretty much be done for with A-Rod, despite the Devontae Adams trade. Houston's kind of been looking a little shaky, but I think they'll be fine with CJ. And the Colts have been doing well. And I think it was another team, Jacksonville. It's been surprisingly disappointing. I think that's pretty much it across the AFC. Like I said, it's a very top heavy with your big dogs and the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bills. So I think those three teams pretty much are kind of battling out versus where outside of the Lions, the NFC is kind of open for the taking. Because I do think this Lions team, I think, haven't really truly been tested, but I think despite throughout all their other games, they've been kind of dominating across the league. I think that smacking they put on the Cowboys, as I said, giving the Vikings their first loss. So this Lions team, I think, is for real. So it's gonna be interesting as they continue to close out the season. And then next, want to get into, of course, the top four. Top four. Favorite album of late has still been Rod Wave's album. In 25 has been on rotation. Last Lap, Dare, Bachelor, Falling Fast in Love, Passport Junkies. Oh man, that whole album is solid. It's been fire. Thoroughly enjoying it. And yeah, really just been that album in rotation. And obviously, my usual mixes and things like that. But yeah, it's been that Raw Wave album. Constant rotation. Favorite show to watch currently still kind of been the Aaron Hernandez, the American Sports Story, the Aaron Hernandez story that's been fun. As I think I want to say it's like 3 episodes to go, 4 more episodes to go in that story. My show Shrinking came back on Apple TV. Season 2, The Irrational season 2 came back. I've been watching that. 911. Gotta watch the new season of SWAT. Yeah, my shows are back. My comfort shows, my feel good shows. But yeah, that American sports story with Eric Hernandez has been in constant rotation as well. Just that, I think, is the insight into kind of the psychology of kind of from the things we know to things we don't know of. So it's like they're kind of like trying to uncover it, or obviously, being dramatic with it, but kind of trying to tell a story of who was this individual truly. I think that's always interesting when it comes to these docs on people and their lives. But no, it's been a great watch. The casting not the best casting, but it's still been a solid watch regardless. What do I have currently going on? Not really much of late, just constantly, still just staying in the gym, being consistent there and in that area. And just, constant growth every day, just trying to get better, being the best version of myself every day, as I always say. And then what am I looking forward to? As always, whatever events or moments that pop up or arise that, allow me to be able to learn more about myself. Obviously the trips. I told you I was going to do more games. I went to a Checkers game on Friday and then a Hornets game on Saturday. So just like I said, going more, doing more, and yeah, just enjoying what the world has to offer and allow myself to be in those moments. And then of course trips and whatever trips arise as well that I eventually want to take. So excited for that as well. And then as always, appreciate you guys for listening. To Honest Conversations with Mo, the Mo Love podcast. Appreciate y'all for always listening to my rambling. And just getting a piece of insight into kind of how not only my mind works, but the things I think about. And as always, till the next time, peace.